You know, I always thought I'd left the adrenaline behind when I retired the badge, but I was wrong. I knew something was dead wrong the moment I watched two HOA patrol guys, wearing those ridiculous tactical vests, open my private gate at 2 o'clock in the morning. One was filming my barn, the other was actually measuring the gravel of my driveway like they were preparing a hostile takeover. And all I could think was, you boys just picked the wrong rancher to mess with. 10 days later, those same two men, along with their high and mighty president, were in handcuffs at that very gate. If there is one thing you learn from living alone on a ranch for more than a decade, it's this: your land talks to you. Not with words, no, but with signs, little changes, things out of place. That morning, the land was trying to tell me something. The sun had barely pushed over the Sierra Ridge when I stepped out with my coffee. Dixie, my old blue heeler, sat next to me, ears perked, waiting for the day to start talking back. As I walked down the long, gravel Stone Creek Drive, I saw them. Tracks. Fresh ones, cutting a clean line across the fine gravel of my private road. Not mine, not my feed guys, not the UPS guy. These weren't from last night. These were from early dawn, maybe an hour before I woke up. I crouched down, touched the gravel, still loose from the weight shifting over it. The tread was wide, deep, aggressive, too clean. Pavement princess tires, big attitude, zero real work. Not a ranch truck, not even close. I stood up slowly and let my eyes trace the curve of my private road as it snaked back toward the valley. Far down the slope sat Ironwood Village, one of those HOA-controlled pockets of suburbia where every house looks like it came out of the same beige mold. Their property ends at the bottom of the hill. Mine begins there, black and white in the county registry. So, what the hell were their tires doing up here? A few hours later, when I checked the trail cam footage, the puzzle became a warning. There it was, a white SUV rolling slow up my road. Ironwood HOA Safety Patrol printed clean across the door. Not law enforcement, not county, not anybody with jurisdiction past their own fancy sidewalks. Just a pair of glorified meter maids creeping up my land like they owned the place. I leaned back, stared at the paused frame, and said under my breath, so that's how it's going to be. Trouble rarely shows up all at once. It tests the door first. And 2 nights later, the land spoke again. And this time, it didn't whisper. It was just after midnight when the motion alert buzzed on my phone. The alert wasn't from the lower field. It was from gate cam 1, angled right at the keypad. Dixie lifted her head from the foot of the bed, ears forward. I slid out, grabbed my phone, and opened the feed. And there it was, same white SUV. Headlights were off, but the faint glow from the dash lit up 2 figures in dark uniforms. Not sheriff, not county. Just that HOA logo again. The SUV stopped inches from the gate. The passenger stepped out, didn't look around, didn't hesitate. He walked straight to the keypad like he'd done it 100 times. And then, the gate unlocked. No forcing, no tampering, just a clean beep and the heavy steel slid open. Son of a gun, I muttered. There's a special kind of anger that hits you when a man walks through a boundary he knows he has no right to cross. Not curiosity, not a mistake, a choice. The SUV eased inside. The camera caught the reflection of a card in the passenger's hand, a damn access code to my gate. Somebody had either leaked it to them or they'd gotten it another way. I sat there jaw tight. Retirement had cooled me down, sure, but old instincts never die. The SUV stopped halfway up the driveway. Both men stepped out. One carried a flashlight and a camera. The other held what looked like a surveyor's measuring wheel. The camera feed picked up every crisp detail in the infrared glow. The man with the camera shined it toward my garage, snapping photos like he was documenting a crime scene. The other rolled the measuring wheel across the gravel, murmuring numbers under his breath. Then the mic picked up the phrase that made my blood go cold. Slope deviation confirmed. Road fails maximum gradient. Road fails. HOA language. Regulatory language. Language that means we're about to make your life hell on paper. I paused the feed and screenshotted their faces. Heavy-set guy, buzz cut. I called him Patrolman 0. Second guy, thinner, wire rim glasses, clipboard 1. True believers are the worst kind. They don't think they're trespassing. They think they're correcting. I saved everything, video, audio, still frames, organized into folders the way I used to when I worked cases. Then I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I pulled on my jeans, laced up my boots, and stepped out into the cold night air. I didn't go confront them. Not yet. That would have been exactly what they wanted. I watched from the shadows, letting them walk right into more evidence. They spent 15 full minutes on my property, measuring, filming, talking like they were preparing a report to some higher power. Finally, they left just as calmly as they came. And that's when I knew this wasn't curiosity. This wasn't a mistake. This was the beginning of an operation. By the time the sun started to turn gray, I had a flash drive in my pocket and a destination in mind: the sheriff's office. The sheriff's office hadn't changed in the 10 years since I left the badge behind. I killed the engine, stepped out, and stretched my back. Inside, the place smelled like old coffee and paperwork. I was there to see Sheriff Harland, the kind of man who still wore the same worried expression he had on late-night calls. "M.O.," he said, pulling me into a quick hug. "What brings you in?" I didn't smile back. "Press play," I said, setting the flash drive on his desk. Harland plugged it in, clicked the first file, and froze. The footage of the HOA SUV rolled silently across the screen. When the two patrolmen stepped out and opened my gate with a code, he muttered under his breath, "You're kidding me." "Nope." He watched the whole thing twice. Once as a friend, once as a lawman. "That's Ironwood Patrol," he said. "They have zero authority past their boundary. What the hell are they doing up on your land? And how'd they get your gate code?" "That," I said, "is what I was hoping you'd help me figure out." Harlan blew out a long breath, the kind of tired men feel after they've cleaned up too many messes caused by people who crave authority. "You did the right thing bringing this in. I'll file an incident report, and I'll talk to their board president." "Harland," I leaned back in the chair. "This isn't carried away. This feels planned." "Milo," he said finally, staring at the paused frame of those two men on my land. "HOA people like that. They don't usually stop after the first warning." I stood up. I figured. I left him with a signed affidavit and a copy of the footage. I knew he'd do his job, but I also knew these HOA types. They don't respond to warnings. They respond to boundaries. Sure enough, later that afternoon, I found a white envelope zip-tied to my gate. I cut it loose. It bore the embossed seal of the Ironwood Village Homeowners Association Community Safety Committee. The letter inside was printed on thick cardstock. It wasn't a request, it was a declaration. "Mr. Flynn, due to its proximity to Ironwood Village and its frequent use by community visitors, Stone Creek Drive falls under extended HOA interest and observation. The HOA will begin assessment and compliance modifications within 30 days. Please ensure unrestricted access for inspectors." They were telling me they were going to improve my private road without my permission, as if it were some public cul-de-sac they owned. I forwarded everything to my lawyer, Sarah Jenkins. Sarah wasn't just a lawyer. She took pleasure in dismantling badly written threats. "Milo," she said, her voice already tight with irritation. "They've lost their goddamn minds. That road is legally yours. They can't breathe near that fence line without risking a lawsuit. They seem eager to test that theory," I said. "They'll fail it spectacularly," she promised. "I'm drafting a cease and desist and a formal notice of non-jurisdiction. They step foot on your side of that gate again. We take them apart piece by piece." 48 hours later, the trouble escalated. Another letter arrived, wedged into the gate bars. This one was from the Community Safety Board, Chairwoman Vivian Cole, the Queen herself. It demanded a mandatory compliance inspection within 7 days and threatened escalation to county authorities if I refused. I laughed out loud. Escalation to county authorities? The same county authorities who already had Sarah's cease and desist and Harlan's report. This was pure, unadulterated arrogance. Sarah's tone dropped into a low, dangerous register. "Milo, this is harassment now. Legal harassment. I'm adding this to the criminal complaint draft. We now have documented trespass, unauthorized access to a locked gate, false inspection claims, and a written admission of intended future trespass. Be ready," she added, "because this kind of escalation usually means they're planning something physical." She was right, and the proof arrived the very next morning, not in a letter, but in the form of surveillance. I walked out to check the gate and froze mid-step. Standing directly across from my property line was a brand-new, tripod-mounted camera pointed straight at my driveway. HOA equipment set up in broad daylight. I stared at it for a long second, then stepped right up to the fence, leaned forward, and gave the lens a slow, deliberate middle finger. That was my declaration of war. The thing about people who crave authority they don't have is they can't resist the illusion of it. They see a sign, they walk straight into it like moths to a bug zapper. I walked into the barn workshop and made a new sign. A beautiful sign. Laminated, bold, and reflective. Engineering survey in progress. Joint initiative. County and HOA. Authorized access only. Do not disturb. It was official looking enough to confuse half the county. Perfect bait. I grabbed 2 bright orange cones, a folding tape measure, and an old toolbox. Empty, just dead weight. I placed the cones and the fake sign just inside the property line. A small motion sensor buried under the gravel tied directly into my phone. A psychological trap. That night, my phone buzzed. Motion detected. Gate Zone 1. Patrolman 0 and Clipboard 1 had returned. They parked outside. Buzzcut approached first, staring at the sign. Clipboard 1 hovered behind him. Then Clipboard 1 stepped inside my fence line, pulled out his phone, and started recording my fake survey setup like he had just discovered federal evidence. My motion sensor pinged again. Legally bulletproof. My bait had worked. Clipboard 1 scanned the QR code on the sign. The QR code I had linked to the county property registry website, showing my parcel number, my ownership documents, and jurisdiction boundaries. I watched his face change slowly. Confusion, concern, realization, and finally, fear. Not the physical kind, the bureaucratic kind. The fear a man feels when he suddenly realizes he might be standing somewhere he shouldn't, and being recorded from 3 angles. They backed out fast, no swagger this time. But the worst part came 2 days later. Early morning, I saw a car parked near the far gate. Not HOA, but a dull gray sedan. A man in a windbreaker stood beside it, pretending to study the gravel shoulder. The back of his jacket read, County Infrastructure Inspection. But the letters were crooked, the jacket too new, and his boots were too clean. He was the next move on Vivian's chessboard, the impersonator. I stayed hidden, watching him unfold a measuring wheel. You don't do that unless you're trying to look official. And if you have to look official, you aren't. I stepped out of the trees and whistled. He jumped so hard, he nearly dropped his clipboard. Morning, I said, calm as cold creek water. You looking for something? He flashed a laminated badge at me. No hologram, no seal, just a clip art county logo. I pulled out my phone and tapped a number I knew by muscle memory. Sheriff Harland. Sheriff, I said loud enough for the fake inspector to hear. You sending an inspector up my way today? Nope, Harland chuckled. You got a mystery guest? Says his name is Landon Whitaker. Claims he's county infrastructure. No Whitaker on payroll, Harland said, his tone sharpening. Milo, hold him there. I'm sending a deputy right now. I looked up from the phone and smiled at the fake inspector. You should sit down, Landon. You're about to get a real inspection. He didn't sit. He ran. He sprinted back to the sedan, dove inside, and peeled out so fast he kicked up a cloud of dust thick enough to choke a horse. I memorized the license plate. The cameras got it anyway. Later that afternoon, Sarah called. Milo, the sedan is registered to Dennis Cole. Who's Dennis Cole? Husband of Vivian Cole, the queen of the HOA. The HOA president herself had escalated this to felony territory. Impersonating a public official isn't just a bad idea. It's a prison-level idea. Sarah confirmed the charges were massive: trespass, unauthorized access, attempted regulatory impersonation, fraud, harassment, and a documented pattern of escalating behavior. But the proof that truly sealed the case came from the fake inspector's panicked retreat. He had dropped his small, black notebook, stamped, Ironwood Hills HOA Field Assessment Notes. I flipped it open. The handwriting was confident. Dates, times, and property sketches. Under one entry. Karen wants this road under HOA oversight by end of month. Another. Check for Karen's yes. If owner resists, escalate. Use county angle. And finally, the goal. Checkpoint. As Karen says, yes. They were planning to set up an actual, physical checkpoint right there on my private road. A final, illegal seizure. The next morning, they didn't send another fake inspector. They sent the worst thing yet. They tried to block a delivery truck on my road. Hank, my hay hauler, called me, his voice strained. Milo, I'm stuck at the bottom of your road. 2 HOA dudes in reflective vests block the entrance. They say I can't come up unless I got some kind of resident permit. I hung up, clipped my body cam to my shirt, and rolled down the hill. They'd set up a makeshift checkpoint right at the mouth of my private road, 2 patrolmen, 1 SUV, 3 cones, 0 authority. Gentlemen, I said, calm and even. Get the hell off my road. Clipboard guy lifted a hand. Sir, this is an active safety inspection zone. We're advising all vehicles to remain where they are. I slapped my county parcel map against his chest. This, I said, is my land. That road, every inch of it, is my private property. You're trespassing, obstructing a lawful delivery, and impersonating authority. You're done. They kicked the cones aside, embarrassed, and trudged back to their SUV. But the real threat wasn't those boys, it was their boss. The next morning, I was sitting on my porch when I heard the radio chatter. The low, female, irritated voice of Vivian Cole. Listen up, she commanded. He doesn't dictate the rules. We do. I want that checkpoint up and running within the hour. Cones, barricades, safety tape. I want everything to look official. If he tries to interfere, we document it. If he gets aggressive, we call the sheriff first. Got it. My hand curled into a fist. She wasn't just trespassing anymore. She was planning an illegal seizure. I pulled out my phone. Sheriff Harland answered immediately. Sheriff, they're building something. On my property line right now. A checkpoint. She's bringing the whole damn roadblock. Harland's voice was hard as granite. Milo, you stay put. Do not engage. I'm heading out. Sheriff, I added. Bring the prosecutor. Tell him to bring whatever paperwork he needs for on-scene charges. You expecting trouble? I'm expecting, I said slowly. That Vivian's about to do something so stupid it'll make her famous. Come fast. She's about to cross a line you can't uncross. I walked down the hill, strapping on my body cam. Every step closer, my stomach got calmer. Down at the base of my road, the HOA had built their masterpiece. A canopy tent, barricades, and Patrolman 0 and Clipboard 1 pacing like rent cops. At the center of it all, Vivian Cole, arms folded, chin raised like a general. She was smiling. Mr. Flynn, she chirped. We're only here to maintain safety. From now on, access requires an HOA pass. She held out a laminated card with my name misspelled. I didn't take it. You've officially crossed into criminal trespass, I said, low, calm, and deliberate. An unlawful restriction of movement. Oh, stop, she scoffed. Nobody's being arrested. Not yet. I pressed record on my phone. Vivian Cole, you are currently violating Colorado Revised Statute 38-5-101. You are impeding lawful access to private property, operating an unauthorized checkpoint. She spun towards her patrolman. Take down the barricade now. But it was too late. I heard the engines. 3 of them, coming up the hill. 2 black and white cruisers, followed by an unmarked sedan, followed by a news van with Channel 7 painted on the side. Vivian turned pale, transparent. The county prosecutor stepped out of the sedan, a short man in a gray suit with a folder tucked under his arm. He didn't walk, he marched. Ma'am, the prosecutor said, opening his folder. You are operating an unauthorized road checkpoint on private property. That is a criminal offense. Vivian stammered. I'm acting on behalf of the community. You should be siding with us. The judge, your judge, he's part of an HOA, too. The prosecutor slowly stared at her. Are you suggesting, ma'am, that my personal associations require me to break the law on your behalf? Vivian realized she'd sunk her own ship. The prosecutor nodded at the deputies. Place her under arrest. No, she shrieked, reaching for the plastic barricade like she could stop the world from collapsing. Patrolman 0 and Clipboard 1 dropped their clipboards and backed away. Within minutes, Vivian Cole was in the back of the cruiser, red-faced, shouting about community sovereignty. The news camera caught every second. At the courthouse, the verdict came down hard. 1 year probation, 300 hours community service, a 5-year ban from holding any HOA office, and the Ironwood HOA fined $330,000 in civil penalties for harassment and overreach. I walked out of that courthouse and installed a new sign at the base of my road. Steel, not plastic. Laser-cut letters bolted into concrete. Private road. No HOA patrol. No Vivian. No exceptions. Life settled back into its rhythm. Fence checks, early mornings, coffee on the porch at sunrise. The peace I felt now wasn't temporary. It was earned. It felt permanent. It felt like home. So let me ask you, what is the most ridiculous escalation you've ever seen an HOA try to pull? Do you think the $330,000 fine was enough to really stop them? Or is the core problem of HOA power still out there? Drop your stories and your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed seeing a rancher turn a 2-minute trespass into a full-scale legal victory, hit that subscribe button.